What if the mountains vanished overnight? Not just eroded, not collapsed, gone. No Everest, no Rockies, no Andes. Humanity wakes up, and every peak, ridge, and towering giant has simply disappeared. No trace, no warning. Just flat Earth where colossal giants once stood for millions of years. Within hours, coastlines begin to shift. Rivers reverse. Winds scream through landscapes once protected by stone. And deep beneath the crust, something begins to awaken. Scientists around the world scramble to understand, but what they uncover was never meant to be found. The truth behind why the mountains are gone is far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. What if they were never real to begin with? Or worse, what if something took them? And if it did, what's coming next? Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For as long as humanity has existed, mountains have been more than just landscapes. They were symbols of permanence. Unmovable, ancient. They shaped civilizations, directed weather patterns, stored freshwater in glaciers, and cradled entire ecosystems in their shadows. In every corner of the world, from the snowy Himalayas to the red-stoned Rockies, mountains stood as the bones of the earth, until now. In the modern age, we rely on them more than we realize. They act as natural barriers against hurricanes, help regulate rainfall and temperature, and even influence global air currents. They host unique life forms, minerals critical for technology, and cultures that have thrived for centuries. Scientists often say, remove one piece of a delicate system, and everything begins to fall apart. But no one ever imagined losing all of them at once. Our satellites scan the Earth in real time. Drones monitor every peak. And still, there was no warning, no signal, no tremor. One night, they were simply gone. Flattened terrain where vertical majesty once stood. That's not just a geological mystery. That's a global emergency. And if mountains, those ancient guardians of the planet, can disappear without a trace, what else can? And who, or what, has the power to do that? It began with a single satellite glitch. At exactly 3:17 a.m. Universal Time Coordinated, a weather monitoring satellite orbiting over the Himalayas stopped transmitting elevation data. It wasn't the first time a satellite went dark, but this time, others followed. Within minutes, dozens of Earth-observing systems across NASA, ESA, and private tech firms began returning bizarre readings. Altitude maps were flattening. Elevation lines disappeared. At first, experts blamed solar flares, system errors, until drone footage confirmed the unthinkable. Everest, K2, Annapurna, all gone. Reduced to rolling plains like they had never existed. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from South America, Europe, Africa. The Andes, the Alps, Kilimanjaro vanished. Panic turned to paralysis. No earthquakes, no landslides, no debris, just absence. Teams of geologists, climatologists, military analysts, even theologians were summoned into emergency meetings. The official narrative was silence. But inside the research bunkers, fear was growing fast. Because buried deep in archived seismic data, there were warnings. Tiny anomalies in Earth's magnetic field, pulse patterns under tectonic plates. Signals ignored for decades, dismissed as noise. One report from 1987, declassified only days after the event, mentioned a theory long ridiculed in academic circles. The mountains are not natural. They are containment. Containment for what? Exactly, the file ended there. Redacted. Torn. But someone had known. Someone had tried to warn us. And now, it was too late. Because whatever was held back by those ancient giants was no longer held at all. Within just 48 hours of the mountains vanishing, the world began to change in ways no one had predicted. Wind speeds over the central plains of Asia tripled, with gusts reaching over 180 kilometers per hour, tearing through villages that had stood undisturbed for centuries. In South America, the sudden absence of the Andes shifted the entire jet stream, redirecting storm systems deep into the Amazon basin, flooding ecosystems not built to survive such force. Rivers once fed by glacial melt began to dry. In northern India, over 14 million people lost access to clean water in a single day. Scientists tried to explain it with models and charts, maps comparing before and after elevation data filled every screen in global command centers. But no graph could explain what was happening underground. Seismic activity began rising, not along fault lines, but deep in the Earth's crust. where no known tectonic interaction should occur. These weren't normal quakes. They pulsed, rhythmic, almost like signals. And then came the sound. Subtle at first. A low-frequency hum heard in dozens of locations, always in places where mountains once stood. Locals began reporting strange vibrations in the ground, headaches, nosebleeds. One village in Kyrgyzstan evacuated entirely after their livestock began to panic, running in circles, refusing to eat, dying within hours. But the most disturbing detail came from Greenland, where a lone research outpost recorded a spike in geothermal radiation, followed by a transmission no one could decode. Just static, and something else. A whisper layered beneath the noise. Slowed down, amplified, filtered. One word became clear. Awakened. 3 days after the event, a classified symposium was held beneath Geneva, not by governments, but by the world's leading geophysicists, biologists, and theoretical physicists. What they discussed was not just unprecedented, it was almost impossible. According to ancient mineral scans, some taken decades ago, others reanalyzed after the event, the base material beneath most mountain ranges didn't match the surrounding geology. Trace isotopes found only in meteorites were embedded deep in the mountain roots. More alarming, these elements seemed to emit radiation patterns in mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci spirals, even harmonics. One physicist dared to say it out loud. The mountains were not geological formations. They were structures. Constructed. Designed. But by who and why? That's where the controversy began. Some believed they were ancient machines, implanted to stabilize Earth's climate and tectonics. Others believed they were something darker, prisons, tombs, or anchors, holding something below. The hums, the seismic pulses, the whisper in Greenland, it all pointed to one terrifying possibility. The mountains weren't just gone, they had been deactivated. The Earth, one scientist said, has started breathing again. But it's not the same Earth we knew. And then came the question no one could shake. If the mountains were built, then who built them? And what happens now that they're gone? In the aftermath of the mountain event, every major scientific institution turned its full focus to understanding what had happened and how to stop what might come next. Deep Earth scanners were reprogrammed to penetrate further than ever before. AI models, trained on centuries of seismic, magnetic, and gravitational data, ran millions of simulations in real time. But none of them could explain what they were seeing. Beneath the surface, new voids began to form, vast empty pockets in the mantle, lined with heat signatures that pulsed like a heartbeat. The Large Hadron Collider, reactivated on emergency override, detected a shift in quantum resonance. Something was changing the way particles behaved near former mountain sites. Drones sent into these zones malfunctioned. Signals scrambled. Some never returned. The only footage recovered showed black, rippling surfaces far underground, not rock, not liquid, something else entirely. Meanwhile, linguists began analyzing the whispers picked up in different locations. Multiple languages, ancient and forgotten, layered into a pattern, not random. Deliberate. Like a countdown. But to what? No one agrees. Military satellites have gone dark over several regions, fueling rumors that governments know more than they admit. And one by one, independent researchers tracking the anomalies have begun to disappear. The terrifying truth is, for all our technology, all our data, all our scientific brilliance, we're not even close to understanding what's really happening. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we were never supposed to. As panic deepened and trust in institutions eroded, the world turned to theories, not just scientific, but philosophical, conspiratorial, even religious. Some experts, still clinging to known science, claimed the mountains were formed by ancient tectonic anomalies, and whatever held them together had finally failed. A rare, natural collapse. But that explanation didn't hold, not without evidence, not when the terrain where they stood remained untouched, perfect, smooth, unnatural. Others whispered of something darker, that the mountains weren't destroyed, they were reclaimed, that they were never meant to be part of our world, only placed here to contain something far older than human memory. And now, that seal is broken. One theory, leaked from a black site lab, suggested that our own technology, deep drilling, particle acceleration, geoengineering might have triggered a chain reaction. That we did this. We poked too deep, asked too much, built machines that shook the balance, and woke something up. There were even those who believed the Earth was never truly ours. That mountains were warning signs, scars left by a war fought long before humans walked upright. And that now, without them, the old cycle begins again. But here's the terrifying paradox. If the mountains were prisons, then we've released the prisoners. But if they were machines, what if they were keeping us alive? What if the real purpose of the mountains was to protect something not from us, but to protect us from something else? And now, we're alone with it. In the weeks following the disappearance of the mountains, the world entered a state of irreversible transformation. Atmospheric instability worsened, jet streams collapsed, seasonal patterns unraveled, and entire regions faced extreme droughts while others drowned in relentless storms. Coastal cities began to sink, not from rising seas, but from tectonic shifts that had once been absorbed by the pressure of mountain ranges. Without those ancient formations acting as stabilizers, the planet trembled. Volcanoes once thought dormant awakened. Magnetic poles began to drift faster than ever recorded. But it wasn't just the environment that changed, it was us. Across former mountain regions, reports of mass hallucinations surged, people hearing voices, seeing shapes in the sky that defied physics. In Chile, hundreds reported shared dreams, all describing the same figure, a tall, faceless form made of stone, whispering in languages no one could translate. In Nepal, a strange mineral was discovered, warm to the touch, constantly vibrating, and impossible to move from where it grew. Scientists who studied it stopped sleeping, then speaking, then disappeared. Governments imposed blackouts. Entire regions were marked as unstable zones closed to the public. Satellites were redirected, and one by one, independent communication networks were shut down. But whispers still got out. They say something is growing beneath the earth. Not a creature, but a presence. A consciousness that once slumbered, now stirring, learning, watching. And humanity? We are no longer at the top of the chain. Because in removing what we never understood, we exposed ourselves to something far more intelligent and far less forgiving. What happens when the very foundation of our world is revealed to be a lie? Or worse, a warning we ignored? The mountains, we once believed, were symbols of strength, stability, endurance. Now, their absence has forced humanity into a mirror, one we never wanted to look into. All our advancements, our science, our machines, none of them prepared us for a truth we didn't create. And now we face a choice. Do we keep digging, trying to understand what lies beneath, risking the little stability we still have? Or do we retreat, accept that there are forces beyond comprehension, and live under the shadow of something older than time itself? For the first time, progress is no longer just a path forward, it's a gamble. Scientists argue, should we attempt to communicate with the presence that stirs beneath us, or seal it off and bury the truth forever? But sealing it may no longer be an option. We broke the seal once. It may never hold again. Philosophers speak of a necessary humility, that perhaps this moment is not our downfall, but our test. Can we evolve not just in knowledge, but in restraint, in reverence? Or will our hunger to know, to control, to dominate, doom us again? The earth is changing. So must we. But which version of humanity will survive this change, the curious or the wise? The builders or the destroyers? Remember how we began? One morning, the mountains were simply gone. At first, it felt like a glitch in reality, an error, a mistake in the natural order. But now you know, it wasn't an accident. It was a signal, a message, or maybe a response. And the most terrifying part? Not that we don't understand it, but that someone, somewhere, might. I'm not here to tell you how to feel. I'm not even sure how I feel. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about those seismic pulses, the whispers, that word. Awakened. What does it want? Is it watching us now? Or is it already part of us? Maybe the mountains weren't the secret. Maybe we are. If the earth was built around a cage, and that cage is now open, then what does that make our world? A sanctuary? A test? Or just bait? I can't shake the thought. What if we were never meant to survive without the mountains? What if their silence was the reason we thrived? And now, in their absence, the countdown begins. So tell me this, if you woke up tomorrow and everything familiar was gone, not just mountains, but cities, names, history itself, would you even realize it? Or would you just keep walking forward like nothing changed? Let me know in the comments. What do you think was hidden beneath the mountains? And more importantly, do you think it's finished rising?